Welcome to the You Can Mentor podcast. This is Zach, and I am with Noah McGuffey. Noah, say hey.
What's up?
Oh, nothing much, Noah. Just hanging out, buddy.
Come on now. I love it.
How's it going today, Noah?
It's going good. It's going good. Excited to be on the podcast. Really thankful. I feel like I made it. I feel like I made it. I love it.
I don't, I don't know if you being on my podcast is really you making it, but hey, man, if that's what you want to think.
That's right. Yeah.
So we were supposed to have this podcast last week, I think, Noah, but we had to reschedule. Tell us why we had to reschedule.
Uh, I go to Jake's Burgers probably twice a week, and I'm sitting in the restaurant with a good friend, and someone walks in and says, "Hey, someone's car's been hit in the parking lot." And so I walk out, and a big food truck had backed up into my beautiful 2013 Subaru Outback, and it was a little bit of a mess. But the guy was really nice. He did all the right things. He gave me his insurance, and we took care of it. So, but yeah, had to reschedule that. It was a little bit of a hectic morning a couple weeks ago, but we're good now.
It's good, man. It's good. All right, Noah. So tell us who is Noah McGuffey?
Who is Noah McGuffey? What a great question.
Thank
Noah
you.
McGuffey is a young 24-year-old man living in Dallas. He just got married this year, so he's learning a lot about life. But nah, man, it's been great. I got to um have a cool growing up experience. I grew up overseas. My mom and dad were missionaries with Campus Crusade, known as Cru now, and uh, cross culture kid. Moved back to the States when I was about 11. We had lived in China for 6 years. Well, at least for me, China for 6 years, Greece for 5 after that, and then the States, which is just like the three most different places possibly that like you could live. But it was great, and I wouldn't trade, those experiences for the world. But moved back to the States. Both my parents were Aggies. You know, grew up there, then went to A&M. Not because I was like crazy, like A&M as most Aggies are, uh, but it was just something I was excited to do, and started serving in ministry there called Youth Impact. And that kind of has led me up to what I'm doing now up in Dallas at Forerunner Mentoring. So, been up here for a year and a half now, and I've loved it. It's been great. It's a great place to kind of step into that next phase of life. And Margaret, my wife, and I, we've loved being up here. So that's Noah McGuffey as of right now.
It's awesome, Noah. Uh, Man, so tell us what it was like growing up overseas.
Uh, Definitely strange. Like, as a kid, you only understand so much. So in some ways, that my parents are doing something good, something cool, but not fully understanding maybe what's going on. So I don't remember the 0 to 6, the China years, all that much. But definitely a lot more about Greece. And my mom and dad, they put us in the public schools, and so that was like super interesting. Um, I feel like a lot of missionary kids, end up going to some English speaking boarding school. I don't know, some military school or something like that. But we went to the public schools, which honestly was really great. Hard, really hard, but really great. And so learned to speak the language and stuff like that, which I've since forgotten. So don't ask me. Don't ask me to say anything because I don't know how to speak anymore. But yeah, really really cool experiences like that, and just getting to see your parents do, just live their life for Christ first and foremost above anything else. I mean, that's gonna be pretty impactful on the rest of my story. So yeah, it was really fun to do that. Yeah.
Man, so like so I'm assuming that you wouldn't be here today doing what you do if it wasn't for those years. So tell me how growing up overseas uh, kind of grew in you a passion to mentor.
Yeah, so Campus Crusade, that it's college students, it's all about students. And so there are these clear dynamics between my parents. They were a little bit older. They've been, doing this thing for a little bit. They're familiar with working with students and just loving them, just meeting them where they're at, no matter clearly like where they're from, what their background is, and ultimately just wanting to get to that point of talking about the things in life that really matter, which is primarily about Jesus. And so, as a kid, again, like as a kid, you don't know exactly what all is happening, but you see your parents sitting down with young people and investing in them, like that much was clear. Um and so I think that, I mean, my mom and dad, they're very humble. They're not like, putting themselves on a pedestal, but it was clear that they made their life about other people and not about really themselves. Like they left family. They had like those hard getting on the plane with grandkid type situations where everyone's, crying and, um, and if, I mean, they would speak to their experience as nothing but, an honor for them to be able to serve the Lord. But it was clear to see that they made their life about other people. And so, I probably didn't understand how to express that until, I got much older. But that's something that I definitely saw and wanted to, I wanted that to be the same for my story. I don't want my life to be about me. So yeah, just seeing him do that was really impactful.
It's awesome, man. Well, no, dude, you're a young cat, but we've been able to spend some time together over the past couple of years, and man, it's just like so obvious that the experiences that you've had in life has kind of made a tremendous impact on you, and now you get to impact others, and man, I can tell that it's an awesome thing. So kudos to mom and dad, huh?
Come on now. Come on, mom. Come on, dad. Love y'all.
All right, Noah. So tell us about what you do and where you work.
Yes. So, I work at Forerunner Mentoring, small-ish nonprofit up in the Lake Highlands area, Northeast Dallas. Started working there about a year and a half ago, and I kind of, I stepped into, the role, we call it the mentor coordinator. So my job is essentially, to help match the boys that are in our program to godly men in our community. So Forerunner Mentoring, kind of the idea is we want to, we want to fulfill the potential of young boys who are growing up in the Lake Highlands who do not have a father figure at home. And so we do that. We run an after school program. We provide family support for single moms. But we also, yeah, the mentoring pieces. If we don't have this father figure at home, how can we provide these young men in our community with what it looks like to be a man of God? So matching them to a mentor would be a way to do that. And so it's recruiting, it's finding these guys. Like, where are they? Where are these guys that could make a positive impact in Jesus' name, for young men in our community? So finding them, partnering with local churches and organizations, to find these guys, onboarding them and training them, getting them ready. We don't want to just throw people in there and say good luck, right? We want to help prepare these guys. So, onboarding them through our process, going through all the safety things, matching them. That takes, I mean, that's a process, finding the right match for a kid in our program, and then continuing to support that mentor mentee relationship for however long that relationship lasts. Hopefully a great long time. And so, aside from that, it's working with church partners, throwing events, and as I always like to say, driving vans around the Dallas area. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that I do. But yeah, that's kind of a quick summary of the role.
That's awesome, Noah. Why don't we talk about recruiting? So tell us, what are some of the challenges that you guys have had in regards to trying to find people to mentor?
Yeah. I don't think that we've ever been in a place where, or at least since my, starting at Forerunner, where we can say every kid at Forerunner has a mentor, that needs one. And so, we see this great need, continuously. And so, but at the same time, it's like the reality is not everybody knows in our community like what Forerunner does. And so we have a responsibility to get the word out there. Hey, this is what we do. I mean, people love, being able to serve Jesus. Like that's clear, and we just need to let people know like about the opportunity to do that in our space. And so I think that a big challenge is just making that known to people. Again, it's like I think a challenge is we're not just taking anybody to come in and hang out with a kid, right? We're trying to find the right people. I always tell like guys, maybe if I'm sitting down with them for a recruiting talk or something, we're not just trying to help our boys be better people. Like that's a big part of what we do, but we're trying to help them be men of God, followers of Jesus. And so, in order to recruit the right people, we have to find guys that are in a healthy place to do that. Guys who are actively chasing after the Lord, who are walking in church community, and you could go down the line, and it can feel like we're looking to check all these boxes, but really we just need guys who are able to love Jesus and love a kid really really well, and so um, I would say that kind of meeting that criteria is a responsibility that we have as an organization. If moms are putting their boys in our responsibility, and we want to say that, yeah, we're gonna work hard on our end to do that for you. But also just getting the word out about who Forerunner is and what we do in our community. Those are the two probably main challenges.
Man, so every mentoring nonprofit that I ever talk to, they all want to know how to recruit more mentors, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, very seldom do I meet a nonprofit and they're like, yeah, 100% of the kids who want to be in our after school program or in our one on one mentoring program have a mentor. Most of the time there is a waiting list. So, number one, tell me how you guys actively recruit. Like, what are some of the like things that you guys have done that have like given y'all the opportunity to meet more potential mentors? Uh, and then just like tell me what, uh, yeah, just like how you guys have seen success in that.
that's great. Yeah, that's a great question. Something I think about a lot, and I think it's a moving thing. Like there's always like I never want to be closed minded and say this is how we do it, and not be open to new ways of doing that. I think, yeah, like I said, connecting with churches. So I'm always trying to, find churches that are primarily a lot. It makes the most sense. Like churches want to serve the community that is around them, as they should. Like that's a great thing. So going and finding those churches, no matter how big or small that they are, like there are people that want to serve the community that is around them in Jesus' name. And so let's find those churches and let's talk to their staff. Let's tell them about who we are as an organization. Let them know our vision, the end goals for our program, and for what mentoring would look like. Churches want people in their flock, I guess, for lack of better words, to be serving and loving their community as Jesus has called us to. So I think that's the biggest deal. Aside from that, I would say referrals is really big for us. I think one thing that was shown that was told to me that has been super helpful whenever I onboard a mentor and go through a training. The last like slide in my presentation at that training is, hey, can you think of 2 to 3 other people who could do what you're signing up to do right now? I mean, it's not I don't it's not about our impact and what we're doing, but I think that what I'll say to those guys in those trainings is, "Hey, you're sitting in this room for a reason, and it's probably because someone gave you maybe just a small invitation, right? And now you're sitting here and you're maybe gonna get matched to this kid and make a big impact on this kid in Jesus' name." And so I think if you could think of like 1 to 2, 3 other guys who could do the same thing that you're doing, that small invitation might lead to a really, really cool story. And so, sharing that with the guys who are coming into our space, if every guy that comes in brings another guy, that brings another guy, that brings another, like that's going to have a cascading effect and bring in, I think, a lot of people who would be great mentors. So that's a new strategy that I've been trying to kind of develop as we're bringing guys into space. And yeah, so using referrals from the guys that we have. Hey, like I could get on stage and try to cast a vision and share about our organization, but you telling your friend, "Hey, come do what I'm doing," that's gonna have so much better of an impact than me just trying to, get guys in myself. So those are my thoughts kinda on recruiting.
Yeah, man. And kind of going back to the church partnership thing. I mean,
Yeah.
tell me how do you get in the door of a church that you might not go to?
Yeah, so for example, I just met up with a new staff member at the church that I do go to. So he's a new staff member, and he just moved here from another church, or he had interned at a church, a while ago. And so I was like, "Hey, man, I know that this is a church that is in our area that has a lot of young, men who I think would be great mentors for the boys in our program. Can you connect me? Can we like sit down together?" Like you in my church, we already know about us at Forerunner, what we do. Can we sit down together? Can you come with me and sit down with this church so that we can have a conversation of what that looks like from my perspective, but also from you who are in official church partnership with us. And you can share from y'all's experience. Hey, it's cool to see the men of our church serving and making disciples. And so that would have a greater impact than me just cold calling, these different churches in our area. So it's again, I mean, it comes back to relationships, right? Like it's sometimes hard. Sometimes it feels like the who knows who game. But that's makes sense because it's about relationships, and so it's about trust. Um, so I think that is the primary way. If we find the new church partnership, we're developing a relationship with them. It's like, okay, again, what other churches that are in our area do you guys have relationships with that we can get to know and share what we're doing? So
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a great question to ask anyone who volunteers with you, knowing where they go to church and saying,
that's
"Hey,
right.
man, you know, is there an opportunity to have me and you and your pastor sit down just so we can just kind of see if there's an opportunity?" Right?
That's that's right.
So,
And I also think that whenever I don't know like if you've ever experienced this, but whenever we get a mentor from a new church, it almost feels sometimes like a domino effect where if we can help that guy share the stories of what God is doing in his mentoring, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here comes another guy from that church. Oh, wait, here comes two more guys from that church. And then all of a sudden you have 10 guys that are serving in your ministry. And it's like, wow, that's really, really cool to see God use that. And so yeah, telling those guys to share their stories is huge.
but it's only good for them to share stories if they've had a good experience, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, when it comes to recruiting and retaining, how do you guys give your mentors the best experience possible so that they're excited about mentoring, so that they have a good experience, so that they are able to share the good news with their small groups and with their churches and with all of their neighbors?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes, like, I don't know, like, we don't wanna be, like, fabricating that, you know? Like, sometimes the stories are hard, and I think that that's just as important to share that as well. Like, it doesn't have to be all fun and games, whenever you start mentoring. Sometimes it's like, "Wow, my mentee, maybe he's going through some really hard stuff." But I think that that's just as compelling to give an invitation to other people than it is to say, "Hey, look at this impact that I've made, like, on this kid." And again, it's not about our impact, and so I think that when mentors are going through our onboarding process, um, I want to be in a habit of challenging them to share what's going on with the people around them, regardless of whether it's like they're seeing an impact being made or if they're seeing something really hard that their mentee is going through. Like, I think of a guy who's like, man, my mentee hasn't opened up. Like, there seems like there's this wall still that's between us. But I see that that's because of a lot of stuff that he's gone through in his life. And so I'm just going to trust that God will use me if I continue to show up in his life. And there are other kids in our program that are just like my mentee who need that. And so whether it's like a positive story or maybe a hard or a negative story, I think it doesn't matter. I think that those are things that we can be sharing with people because that's the reality of what ministry is. It's not always fun. So I think the onboarding process is important to make sure that those guys know that, hey, let's share regardless of maybe what the situation feels like, and trust that God will use that.
So I feel like having a really good process to onboard a mentor is vital to having a good experience.
Oh
Can
yeah.
you just kind of share what you guys do whenever you onboard? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's multi-step. I mean, there's so many different elements to it. You have a just from a practical standpoint, like again, moms are putting their young boys and our responsibility. Like we need to make sure that we're being very safe and respecting and honoring our moms by taking that process very seriously. And then there's the whole equipping side of it too, and making sure that a mentor at least feels some sort of confidence and readiness to start hanging out with that kid without feeling like a pressure of, it needs to be this, or that. So I would say kind of just step by step, you know, a lot of my onboarding looks like first I'm meeting with a guy for breakfast or coffee or lunch. We're talking about the ministry. I'm sharing about our vision, our end goals, what the commitment looks like for a mentor, and just sharing stories, of impact. But really, I think what's the biggest thing is developing a relationship with that guy right from that first time that you sit down with him. Because I can give him all the info about the organization, but he like anybody, like any kid in our program, people want to be known, and so I want to get to know that guy sitting across the table from me and start developing a relationship with him, regardless of maybe if he would, step into our ministry or not. Say he does, we need him to fill out an application, and so he's going to, um, you know, provide information on himself, what church he goes to how he heard about our organization. That's important for recruiting so that we can know how guys are finding us. Um, and then we're going to see references. He needs to put references on his application. So after that, we'll come in for an interview. We're going to walk through a lot of things from a safety standpoint. We're going to talk about that guy's, health and his walk with Jesus, not from a judgment perspective, but from a perspective of, hey, like this is a responsibility that we have to be walking with Jesus if we want to disciple somebody or at least have elements of discipleship. Um, so after that, we'll reach out to the references that he put on his application. That's very telling, for us to see like when references come back in quick and they have high praises for that guy. That makes me feel very confident and comfortable about onboarding a mentor. We're gonna run a background check. We're gonna have uh, guys go through a ministry safe training where they're learning about the effects of in our culture now, all the terrible stuff that is happening, from sexual abuse to neglect. And I think it's important for them to see that and phrasing that as a, um, you know, this is for you, to recognize that we want to be aware that like we have a target on our back being a youth organization. And we know that there are wolves in sheep's clothing that are around. And so we want you to know that we are aware of that. But also we want you to help us. Like we need you to be, aware of things happening and looking around and be our ally in making sure that our ministry is safe. Um, After that, they would come in for a training and orientation. So a couple guys at the same time coming in, and that's where we're kind of giving the big picture of what Forerunner does because they're signing up for kind of or a piece in the puzzle, but it's so helpful to have the full picture of what we're doing so that they can know kind of how that piece fits in to the puzzle. So we're sharing about our after school program, about our mom ministry, about all the different things that we do, so they can gain a more perspective, I guess, about what it is that we're doing. So we're walking through a lot of safety stuff. We say we're one-to-one mentoring as an organization. What does that mean? Does that mean I hang out alone with a kid? Like what does that mean? And so walking through kind of what it looks like to show up, to build up, and to share Jesus with a mentee. So we have paperwork. We walk through, again, just so many different safety stuff. And then I'll explain to them kind of what the matching process looks like and how all that goes down. So hopefully within 30 days or however long it takes, we'll match them to a kid where I'm like, hey, we're not going to start mentoring until we sit down with mom, because if mom is not on board with what's happening or is not in the loop, then we're dropping the ball, because again, we want to be in a position where Jesus is our hero, but we're going to honor mom first and foremost. It's not about us as the mentors. We're here to support this person who is providing so much for their kid. Um, yeah. So I think that if we're ever coming from a place of look at what our ministry is doing in the community, how is that going to make a mom feel? Like we want to sit down, hear her, let her get to know that mentor, that guy who's hanging out with her kid, and make sure that we're good there. So then after that, that's when the mentoring would start. So I know I just gave you a long answer, but yeah, that's what the onboarding process looks like.
And it's so important that you guys go through each and every step, because the more training a mentor gets, the more they feel invested into, the more confident they will be, the better experience they have, which means that they will be a better mentor. They'll be more resilient, but they'll also be able to tell all of their friends, like, hey, look, like this isn't a nonprofit that just tosses this out there and just says, hey man, you you know, go out there and have fun.
Yeah.
No, no, they invest into us, and so, and that is ultimately the best way to recruit, is to have your current mentors have an amazing experience. And also, I think one thing that we talk about a ton is how to recruit, but very seldom do we talk about retaining mentors.
That's right.
So, how do you how do you guys help mentors continue to feel known and invested into and supported so that you can retain them?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like that goes back to that first sit down where if I'm not starting to build a relationship with this volunteer, how would I have the expectation that he would be willing to stay for 10 years or whatever, or to maybe if a kid moves away to get rematched. I mean, it's about having a relationship with him. And so through the whole onboarding process. But after that's over, after that mentor is matched and he starts his mentoring, I mean, am I just dropping off and just moving on to the next guy to get more and more and more and more? I think that I need to be careful, and I need to definitely be in a place of checking in on that mentor. So at Forerunner, we say we want to check in once a month, and that can look not necessarily face to face. That's just checking in different ways to let them know that we're here, that we care, and that I think guys do appreciate that we want to hold them accountable to the commitment that they're making month to month, and so doing that. But I think really sitting down face to face 2 times a year is big. Hey, let's take time where we're doing nothing, but talking about how you're doing, how I'm doing, continue to develop our relationship, and then what does it look like with your mentee right now? How can we be praying with you for your ministry that you're doing? And so I think that's important. I think it's really important too. If I'm running around all of our different programs and seeing all these different things. When I see a guy, one of our mentors there showing up, I think it's really important for me to go talk to that guy and to check just little check-ins. Like that's important. I think it's important to remind the boys that are being mentored to say thank you. I mean, that's something that I talk to our coordinators who run our after school program about. It's like, how can we equip our boys to say thank you? How can we train them and help them see the importance of saying thank you? Because I mean, I think in reality, that's something that we all need. We all want to know that what we're doing is impactful. And I think that a mentor would probably be more likely to stay if a mentee was able to learn and to express how to say, hey, you're making a big impact on me, and it may not sound like that, but saying thank you, man, it's a lot of power in that. And so if we're training and equipping and helping our boys understand. So if I ever see a mentor program and he's hanging out with his mentee, if the mentor is doing something else for a second, I'll be like, hey, let's make sure we're saying, we got to make sure we're saying thank you to your mentor for showing up isn't he awesome that he's coming and spending his time with you today? Like, man, that's so dope. I hope you say thank you. Um, so kind of some of those elements of we want us as a staff to know, like, let these guys know that we care and we want to invest in them. I truly, like, it's not just about the volunteering. There's so many cool guys that I've met because of, my role. I have um all these guys that are amazing humans. I want to get to know them. Like, they're all growing and sharpening me, just because I'm in this seat. Like, I want to get to know them. And so that's so cool. But then also helping our boys learn how to say thank you. I think those two things are big.
Noah, has there ever been a time whenever you've had a volunteer mentor kind of lose vision or heart? And if so, like how do you go about kind of re-engaging them?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's always hard. It's hard to know how to step into that space because you don't want to do like push them even further away, right? By you're not fulfilling your commitment. Like, that's a hard dynamic. I think that yeah, I think that finding time to sit down with that guy, just like a kid, when a kid is maybe acting up, and it's like, well, something's actually probably going on behind the scenes, right? A kid is always acting the way that he's acting for a reason. So I need to catch myself. Sometimes it's easy for me to be like, oh, maybe this volunteer hasn't showed up for a little bit. Like, why is that? And instead, like, just like with our boys in our program, like, I need to take time to hear, like, to go, it's again, relationships. I need to make sure that that guy's okay, and to hear about what's going on maybe at home or, in his work life or whatever. So when you go and sit down with that mentor and hear that, "Oh, wow, you're struggling with this or going through this," then it all kinda starts to fall together. And so I think that, w I want to make sure I'm approaching all of our guys who are maybe, struggling to fulfill that commitment, who maybe seem to have lost vision, with grace. And, like, I'm not some domineering staff member who's, like, waiting to see who's fulfilling their commitment and not. Like, I'm really not. And I want to sit down and hear about what's going on. And so I think about, and in Revelation, where God is talking to, is it Ephesus, the church in Ephesus, about losing their first love? I believe it is. And so, like, with mentors, like, how can we help them remind them of their first love, for why you signed up to do this in the first place? Um, at the heart of that, it's what Jesus has done for us, and so now we're called to go, um, and be about our neighbor. And so helping them, like, hey, mentor, when was the last time you did something really fun, like, with your mentee? Like, not just maybe show up to program and, check the box of, yeah, I showed up. But, like, when is the last time you did something that you really enjoyed, like, that was really fun for you? Um, I think that helping remind mentor these guys who maybe have lost vision to do things that remind them of why they signed up in the first place. Man, go do something really fun with your mentee. Go to a trampoline park, you know, go to, go shoot hoops, go whatever it is that you signed up to do, go back and do that. And so those would be my first approaches, to listen, to hear out, like, what's going on, to remind them to do what they first signed up to do, and then kind of just go from there. Every situation is going to be different, so I don't know if there's a perfect answer for that, but yeah, those are things that come top of mind.
And I think it all comes back to culture, Noah. I mean, like, are you in a culture that cares for people? Are you in a culture where people feel known and valued and invested into, whether that's your staff or your, you know, volunteer mentors? Because if your staff or your volunteers feel invested into, if they feel known, if they feel encouraged, like, man, it's so important to encourage our mentors. Like, if you guys can send them an email, if you can send them a text, if you can give them a phone call or like a voice memo, every mentor needs to be encouraged more. So, but if you're investing into your people like that, then those people will invest into your kids, which that is the ultimate win, right? So, encouraged, well known, well invested into, loved mentors, they give those same things to their kiddos. And so, if you want more mentors, if you want to have a culture of relationship, of engagement, of stability, the best thing you can do is to mentor your mentors, is to make sure that they're good. Because when they're good, the chances of them investing into their mentees in a positive way just skyrockets. Um, so man, it is vital that if you want more mentors, first and foremost, you have to make sure that the current mentors are having a positive experience. And dude, it does come back to relationship. It comes back to being known. It comes back to them feeling like they are cared for. So that's a good word, Noah. Mm. Man, you got any good stories or anything about how a volunteer's life, right? Like how they kind of came in to change a kid's life, but they ended up having a life that was changed themselves.
Oh, man. Yeah. I think that recently we had I don't know, it's just like one of those things where sometimes you see someone who just from like a worldly perspective has less than you, but they're have more joy or they're just they seem to be, you know, uh just really in love with Jesus and glorifying him and with everything that they're saying. And it's like you kind of walk out of that situation like I have no reason to complain ever again. Ever again. And I had one of those experiences the other day, and I think the volunteer did too. It's like you come in thinking that you're gonna help a kid um, follow Jesus. You're gonna make this big impact. And hopefully all those things are true. Um, but you see a kid's faith, that childlike faith that Jesus talks about, a kid with less than you, or maybe a hard circumstance, but a joy that is clear and that really stands out. And I think that that's something that this mentor specifically was like kind of blown away by, and starts to shift some sort of perspective in your life about what matters. And so I remember, yeah, this mentor told me it's like, man, my kid, he doesn't seem to have much, uh, just from my perspective and struggling, and maybe in these areas, but he's excited to come to Forerunner and to learn about Jesus. Like he's just so excited to do that. He's so excited to, go and hang out with me. Like whenever I show up, he comes and gives me a huge hug, and he is just beyond excited to throw the football. And you have mom encouraging that mentor, like, in tears, like, "Oh my gosh, you've made such a big impact on my son." And the mentor's like, "I just came to play Foursquare." I didn't do anything. But the mom and the kid are just so thankful. And I think that that's gonna have a really big impact on a volunteer where that's gonna change something in them to see the power of, obviously, God's doing this work, through me. It's not about me. I'm just showing up. But if we're prayerfully showing up and asking the Spirit to move, then it's fun to sit back and watch, God move. And so I had a mentor, yeah, recently kind of have that experience where he's just showing up, helping a kid who he thought maybe didn't have a lot, but that kid and that mom loved the Lord, and that really stood out to that mentor. Um, and him just showing up, that has an impact on him.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, Noah. Um, so man, my very last question, like tell me what you guys as a nonprofit do to tell your volunteer mentors thank you. Like, do you guys have any gifts? Do you guys have any parties? Like how do y'all make sure that they're uh stay encouraged?
Yeah. I'll say this. That's definitely something that we can grow in. We want to grow. I want to grow. Um, and saying thank you to our mentors. Um, One thing uh, that we've done this last year, is I t-shirts like seem small, but when you give like your volunteer, like a volunteer group, like a quality gift, like that's going to mean something to them. It's like, hey, we recognize what you've been doing all year this year, and showing up for your mentee. So what not a non-quality t-shirt, but getting them something like that's actually cool, that they would wear, like I said, and saying thank you. I want to be in the habit of writing thank you notes, like once a week. Let's knock out a couple of thank you notes, not just to be in the practice of doing it, but because I actually like am really thankful for what our mentors are doing. So being in the practice of doing that. Um, Whenever we like throw a retreat for our mentors, we want to come in from this perspective. Hey, we want to train and equip our mentors to do what they do. But let's also let's set aside some time to really make this a fun experience for them, and to really like, how do we say thank you, and just encourage them and let them um, know what they're doing is really, really awesome. Every time I sit down with the mentor for coffee or lunch, and in one of those support meetings, I hope that they walk away encouraged. I hope that if we're asking our kids to say thank you to them, that we're doing the same thing. So I really hope that that's an encouraging time where they feel strengthened in what they're doing. So whether it's meeting up with them, uh, throwing a retreat, or giving them just a small token of our gratitude, like a T-shirt, or some sort of gift. I think that those are all ways. One thing that I want to grow in is marking down all of the match anniversaries that the mentor and the mentee have. I need to get better at that. Of, hey, bro, you just hit 2 years of mentoring this kid. Like, wow. Like, think back to when you first started. Like, what's changed? Like, I'm sure that we've seen God do a lot, and so I need to get better at doing that. But I think that those were all some thoughts of how to celebrate our guys.
It's a good word, Noah. Thanks, buddy.
Sir,
Uh, all right, Noah. So tell people how they can find you, bud.
how they can find me?
Yeah.
Uh, they can find me by looking up forerunnermentoring.com and going to our staff page. Um, yeah, my email and my number, I think, are both listed on there. Um, so yeah,
Awesome. Well, Noah, thanks so much for taking time out, man. Really, really appreciate you. Um, Dropping some good wisdom on recruiting and retaining and saying thank you and all of that stuff. So, uh, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If this podcast encouraged you, be sure to share it with a friend. And remember, you can mentor. Thank you.